spine car. We're going to work through cat-cow also in this vid. Flexion, so flexion and extension come before rotation when we're training the spine. All right, that is in terms of the rules that we are applying to our training. Rotation comes at the other synovial joints, so our shoulder, hip, etc., before the linear movement. Okay, so example, say at the knee, rotation is going to come before training extension and flexion. All right, in terms of improving movement capacity. That doesn't mean we don't train flexion and extension at the same time. Just if we want to see the improvements in flexion and extension, then we have to take into consideration the rotational component first. In the spine, we're considering the flexion and extension component first. The better a spine flexes and extends, the better it will rotate through the other range of movement it can move into. Same with the spine. It's not saying don't rotate, be afraid of rotating in day-to-day movement, not at all. But in our training, if we want to see improvements in movement of the spine, then again we have to take into consideration how the spine is flexing first, then extending. Then we will start to see, as just mentioned, better movements through rotation and ability to train through rotation and other areas of movement. Okay, creating a strong, robust spine. So, excuse me, I'll hit the deck first. We'll go cat-cow. You can also do this in your global spine car, which I'll talk you through also. So to begin with, again, you can move through this much slower than I'm doing. I'm going to speed it up for demonstration purposes. All the way up into flexion. So this is flexion of the spine, okay? It's the primary curve of the spine. It's really important that our spines can move through this motion. Now I'm going to think about the pelvis first. I'm going to start to tilt. So tilting, tailbone, back and up. As I've pulled into that shape at the pelvis, I can now start to think about extension at the spine. So I start to run into my lower back. Like a slow wave moving up the spine. And again, we'll elaborate on the cues of this movement in session. I'm trying to now feel pulling through here, pulling, all the way up through my thoracic spine, so where I have ribs, trying to connect the dots, which will become, let's say, how do I phrase this? You'll have light bulb moments moving through this. So many little joints. Try to articulate movement. This is a tough movement. Now start to tuck. So start to tuck the pelvis underneath. Now I'm bringing awareness to movement through the lower back. So I run that filter back up. You can call me out on all my hinge points as well. Rounding back up, strong through the shoulders, strong through the hips. Try not to move too much back and forth this way. And that is one rep of your cat-cow. Again, as you probably, if you've gone through a session with me already, you'll know that sometimes we go through that way slower. We stop, we try and segment different areas. But for a daily routine, move through it mindfully, and those cues of stepping your way through the spine, if you think of those movable segments, okay, excuse me, and you're moving your way through the lower back, through the rib cage. Initially you might feel a lot of movements at the pelvis, and then you're just searching for awareness. As long as you're not getting a closing angle pinch, say you're moving into extension, you feel a real pinch, we're okay. If you feel a pinch, come up short of that pinch, and then move that filter up, and focus on then trying to bring some awareness to those other areas of the spine. You can almost think about it as you feel the tension running up the spine, bringing some awareness again to those areas where you feel the tension, just try and pull into a little bit more tension, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Don't worry about the amount of movement. Even a healthy thoracic spine won't get a lot of extension. What we can get, we want, but you don't actually get that much. You could probably see by that rep, I get a lot more flexion than I do extension. Okay, so mindful movements and try and feel for the pull of tension on the closing angle. So this would be through my back as I pull in to extension. And I start to flex. As I come probably more towards the end of the flexion rep, I start to feel a little bit more tension through the front side. Okay, again, you can use the pelvis as a reference point, okay, to start the rep initially. So you're tilting, and then pulling into extension, tuck in, and pulling into flexion. You can start the rep from the top also if you want to. So if I was in this shape here and I was flexed, I could start to pull here initially through the neck mindfully, and then I start to pull into extension, working back down the spine. I'll speed it up into that extended shape. And I can go same again, neck first. I'll speed it up, back up into flexion. Okay. Again, the mindfulness will bring the intensity, okay, to start with and moving forward. I'm always doing these reps and having light bulb moments all the time, okay? So as you move through it, if it feels like the spine is just moving in, say, 2 or 3 chunks to start with, I'm not going to say wicked long term, but wicked short term. You started to identify that. That means we're bringing some awareness to how our spine's moving. It means we can progress. Sweet. That was flexion and extension. In this same vid now, I'll go through the spine car, so the global movement through rotation and searching out all those other corners of movement the spine can articulate. So I'm going to go wider stance. That's pretty wide actually. We'll go wide, not real wide, excuse me. This allows us to lock the pelvis in shape, okay? Bigger base as well. Okay, if you want more feedback on what this is doing, great. If that feels a little bit tight in here, feels uncomfortable, go narrow stance. Also, explore. All right, so keep it simple, but explore. You might be doing a rep here one morning, do a rep here the other morning. Okay, that's as sort of expansive as we need to get for now with this. So I'll create a strong base. I'm going to go for a little bit of a tuck to begin with. All right, that cue possibly gets overused. Possibly overused it as a coach in the past. We're just going to tuck. I'll go side on so you can see that. Just a little tuck to begin with, just to start to bring some awareness to where my pelvis is in space. And you're almost just searching for what feels like a relaxed position. All right, where you might feel like you're just starting to, oh, that feels a little bit different. Maybe I was a little bit stuck here, for example. Set. Now I'm going to start to flex. Cervical spine, I'm not really reaching with too much. Let that go with it. Like ball and chain, it's going to get sort of dragged along for the ride. Okay, I'm really going to try and drive this through my thoracic, so where my spine, where I have ribs, and then into my lumbar spine, so where my mid-back, my thoracic meets the lumbar spine. We have the mid-back, and then into the lower back, okay, into the pelvis. So, or the sacrum, to be more precise. We won't get too nerdy right now. Now start to flex. Again, in terms of how you achieve this, I've gone from the bottom, awareness into my mid-back, up into the thoracic. You can go top to bottom also. You can call me out here. Again. And now I start to rotate. So I'm going to think right shoulder towards left foot. But I'm not dumping in here. I'm now going to start to laterally flex. You can probably see I'm starting to pull this way. So I'm starting to laterally flex. Don't worry, I'll switch view in a minute so you can see me. Now I start to laterally flex. And again, I'll just bring to awareness where you might be pushing to get out of this. Body wants to push here. You see how I push here? I start to keep sort of head more over like center of mass. It's nice and efficient. but I don't start to be able to reclaim movement through the spine, okay, and find out how my spine's moving. That's just my body trying to be efficient. We don't want that right now. So I'm thinking long into the rep here. I don't want to push here. Now I start to go top left corner. So I'm rotating here toward the top left. I now rotate over the top. So imagine I like the sort of like spiral staircase going from here back to here. Imagine that. Dum 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 dum. That'll be exactly how it's happening, but I think it's a nice analogy to try and feel those movements. And you might feel like the scap is trying to pull you, really drive it through the center of your trunk. Top right. Start to laterally flex. Sorry, when you're up here at the top of the rep, you're going to want to push the hips forward here. Again, see how I start to get, share the load evenly through the whole body efficiently? I don't want that. Squeeze the legs, bring the hips back. Less is more. Feel that extension through the spine. Then rotate. Now start to laterally flex. Now if I just switch the side on for you, you'll see I start to pull this way. You can pause at any moment you want the rep. To recap, you're now going to want to probably push this way. That's just from experience. Now flex. So as I'm flexing, I think bottom to top here I like. So I'll start to flex mainly through, say, my lumbar spine. I bring awareness to that. And I can really feel this rotation through the thoracic now, well, trying to, towards my right foot. So rotating that spine towards the right foot. You can think shoulder if you want, but sometimes when I use that cue like I did first up, we start to get this going on. I want this. And pull back to center. Flex, maybe a bit of awareness through the pelvis. And think long into the rep this way. Long this way. You get out here. It's going to be to distribute the load this way. Again, it's really efficient, but it's not great for building the capacity of this stuff. Okay? In this case. We're taking a bit of time with the spine because it is important. You think this is like multi-joint. So it is complex, right? When I'm talking shoulder, again, complex, but we're talking the rotational capacity of one joint. Spine, we're talking many, and the rules are a little bit different. It's freaking complicated as a coach. Doesn't have to be complicated for you guys. Depends how nerdy you want to get. So that was the spine stuff. I'll take you through a rep now of, spine curl globally back the other way without the chat. I'll try to anyway, and then I'll hit you with a cat-cow without the chat, just so you can sort of see a rep done without me rambling on. All right, so Oi. Hope that helps. Those little reps at the end where I just go through it without chatting. Spinal car, cat cow. Hope the rambles are making sense. Nice one.